Welcome. This brief presentation will introduce you to the Immigration Court Observation Project, a part of the Human Rights Defender Project. The Immigration Court Observation Project began in April 2017 in response to the first Muslim ban and the resulting surge of protests. Started as a pilot, the project aimed to harness the outrage into actions to support immigrants. Over 700 individuals have volunteered observing hearings in immigration court during the first 5 years of this project. The project is a collaboration between the Binger Center for New Americans at the University of Minnesota Law School, the Advocates for Human Rights, and Robbins Kaplan, LLP. The Immigration Court Observation Project has many objectives. First and foremost is to bring transparency and accountability to immigration court. Observers document the impact of presidential executive orders and executive branch rulemaking. The project collaborates with other court observation projects nationally and compares Minnesota to national trends. Observers refer cases for representation in litigation. A critical goal is to understand and report on observers' perceptions of justice, due process, and the legitimacy of the court, and ultimately to promote human rights standards for immigration. This is an in-person project at the Fort Snelling Immigration Court in the Whipple Building in Fort Snelling, Minnesota. Volunteers observe and document deportation hearings. Our primary focus is on hearings for people in ICE detention or state or federal prison. We also observe deportation proceedings for non-citizens who are not detained. We observe procedural hearings called master calendar hearings and final hearings also called merits or individual hearings. Observers document their court observations on forms designed for the type of hearing they are observing. There are typically 7 to 8 cases in a 1.5-hour shift observing master calendar hearings. Merits hearings are typically scheduled for 2 to 3 hours and 1 individual case is heard. Court observers may also participate in research, presentations, and special projects. Experienced observers can serve as mentors for new volunteers. All interested people are welcome to volunteer as court observers. This is designed as a layperson project. No prior legal or court experience is required. Volunteers are expected to abide by project guidelines and code of conduct, which are included in the volunteer agreements that all volunteers must complete. All volunteers must attend a training before going to court. New volunteers are strongly encouraged to attend a first session in court with a trained mentor. While practicing attorneys are welcome to participate as court observers, they are encouraged to consider getting trained to provide pro bono representation on bond and asylum cases. A volunteer manual is supplied to help observers understand proceedings. Ongoing education, training, and support is also provided. It is not necessary for observers to understand details of all the legal arguments in order to be an effective observer. No one is expected to be able to document everything. The goal is summaries and impressions, not a transcription of a hearing. Observers gain accuracy and confidence as they get experience in court. Among the expectations of observers are to attend shifts and give ample notice if they cannot attend, to identify themselves by wearing their Human Rights Court Observer name badge, to follow courtroom protocols of powering off all electronic devices, not interfering with proceedings, not interacting with respondents, the non-citizens going through removal proceedings, and following all directives from the judges, guards, or clerks. Observers should document objectively and absolutely refrain from giving any advice to family members, as it could easily be construed as legal or professional advice. Respect the privacy and dignity of all the respondents. Do not share any identifying or sensitive information outside the courtroom. This is a photo of the name badge lanyard that are supplied to all volunteers, English on one side, Spanish on the other. They should be worn each shift in court. Observers are suggested to dress business casual, Please avoid jeans and t-shirts. Don't wear shirts with any slogans. It's often chilly in the courtroom, so you may wish to dress in layers. The Fort Snelling Immigration Court is located in the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building at 1 Federal Drive, Suite 1850, Fort Snelling, Minnesota 55111. All visitors entering the parking lot must show their government-issued ID at the outside guard booth. You may or may not be asked to show an ID in the building. Once entering, you must then pass through security screening similar to the metal detectors at the airport. Regardless of whether you drive and park on site, all building visitors are advised to have a government-issued ID with them, such as a driver's license, state ID, or passport, U.S. or foreign. Do not bring anything that can be construed as a weapon or hazardous material. The Whipple Building is just north of the main terminal of the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport off Highway 62. Observers document many aspects of the hearings, among which are demographic information such as gender and country of origin, the presence or absence of legal representation for the non-citizen in proceedings, the availability and appropriateness of language interpretation, the reasons for awarding or denying bond, the ability to apply for relief from deportation, the impact of criminal justice system on immigration cases, the explanations, arguments, demeanor, and questioning of immigration judges and government attorneys, the financial, geographic, and cultural barriers non-citizens face in proceedings, and evidence of trauma or mental health issues. Questions on the observation form pertain to both factual issues, like those just mentioned, and to the observer's perceptions and subjective assessments. Often, observers' questions and reflections are the most valuable documentation provided. This shows an observation form, as well as the annotated guide highlighted in blue that is found in the volunteer manual. For ease, the observation form is one double-sided sheet of paper. Completed observation forms can be submitted by mail or email. Experienced volunteers can get trained to directly enter their observations into our electronic database. The annotated guide is to be used as a resource to help observers discern how and when to answer each question. The court schedule is subject to change. All hearings are scheduled during business hours, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5:00 p.m. Different types of hearings, detained, non-detained, master calendar, and merits hearings, have their own schedules. The courthouse is closed on all federal holidays. Master calendar court shifts are 1.5 to 2 hours long, starting at either 8:30 or 9 a.m. Merits hearings are 2 to 3 hours long and are typically scheduled beginning 8:30 a.m., 10:30 a.m., or 1:30 in the afternoon. 2 volunteers are typically scheduled for each shift. Once observers are trained, they self-schedule for available court shifts. The list of cases to be heard each day, known as the docket, is posted in the waiting area of the court. Immigration court looks like a regular courtroom, but functions differently in important ways than criminal courts, which people might be more familiar with, so some background is helpful. Immigration court is not part of the judicial branch of government. Immigration enforcement falls under the executive branch of the government and is therefore subject to executive orders, attorney general decisions, and executive rulemaking. The judges are part of the Executive Office for Immigration Review in the Department of Justice. The government attorneys, the prosecutors, report to ICE, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. Most security guards are employees of Federal Protective Services. In the courtroom, there is also a clerk assisting the judge. The respondent is the individual coming before the judge. The respondent is not entitled to a government-provided attorney, as these are civil, not criminal proceedings. The respondent, their attorney if they have one, the government attorney, and the language interpreters may appear in the courtroom on video called WebEx or by phone. People going through deportation proceedings while detained may be held at one of several contracted county jails. There currently are no private ICE facilities in Minnesota. Most of the people we see in detained hearings are held at Sherburne, Candy-Ojai, and Freeborn County jails. Now that you have an introduction to the project, here are the next steps. Register on the Advocates for Human Rights website. Once you do that, you will be notified via email with the date of the next training for new volunteers. You will receive the volunteer manual by email along with options to be scheduled with a mentor. An observer lanyard will be mailed to you after you complete the training. Shift reminders are emailed the weekend prior to all volunteer shifts. The email includes all necessary paperwork and reference documents. These reminder emails contain important updates about paperwork, procedure, and trainings. Volunteers are asked to read them carefully. We want observers to feel confident and effective. The project sends out a monthly electronic newsletter called The Docket with updates, and also schedules monthly debriefs for observers to discuss what they are seeing in court and hear project updates. The Immigration Court Observation Project is very responsive to questions and aims to provide additional resources or training opportunities in response to volunteer interest. Thank you so much for your interest and your attention to this short video. Welcome to the Immigration Court Observation Project.